Hi, Becca. Thank you for coming to the podcast today. I wanted to give our listeners and watchers your bio. Becca Rusinko is a writer, speaker, coach, and strategist. She combines deep soul alignment tools and big picture thinking with down to earth planning and prioritizing to help people bring ideas to reality and cultivate their most fulfilling lives. You can learn more about Rebecca and the soul alignment approach at her website, which I will add to the show notes, which is beccarusinko.com. So welcome, my friend.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So we have been connected only for a short while, maybe in the spring. Was it
Yeah,
the spring?
yeah,
So
just
we
a few
were
months ago.
we were in a networking group together, the Prosper Network. And also we meditate in the mornings together with a
We
group of
do.
women. Yeah,
Yeah,
and Sherry's a lot of support system. So
yeah.
it's nice to see your face when I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I love waking up with
welcome.
that circle.
Yeah. So today our topic is going to be building a better relationship with yourself. So are you ready to dive right in? I do have some questions, but maybe we won't even need them. But I will
I'm
start
ready.
off. You ready? Okay.
Yes.
So what does it mean to build a healthy relationship with yourself and why is it so important?
It's one of those things we rarely think about, right? But any relationship you have, so your relationship to your work, your relationship to your community, your partner, your household, even like your relationship to your home, all of that is coming out of your relationship with yourself. And I think when our relationship with ourself isn't healthy, when we're just kind of not even aware of what we want and need, and it's so easy to fall into that place, but it makes it really hard to engage wholeheartedly with anything that we're doing. I'm a big believer that everything in life flows from our energy. Like we're so trained to think in terms of time or maybe time versus money. But it's all flowing based on our energy. Even money is just the result of how you spend a portion of your energy, whether you're paid salary or hourly, it's paying for some of your energy. Like scientifically, energy is the ability to do work. That's what it is. And so when we're building a relationship with ourselves, we're really tending our energy. So we're tending that source that everything else is flowing out of. Um, and it's important because, when you bring your best energy, you get your best results. And again, that goes for anything you're doing. So, from your vocation to your relationships to even your relationship to the divine and your spirituality, all of that is flowing out of the center of your energy.
I am curious because you're a younger generation than I am, and I was brought up to always think that it was selfish to do for myself. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, were you brought up that you were?
I was. I definitely
Okay.
was. This is something I have only come to maybe in the last 8 years or so. Um, and I'll just share a little bit of my background. 2016, I was still very much in the you wake up, you go grind, grind, grind all day, you go to bed, you wake up and do it again. You're just doing whatever is right in front of you that seems like it needs to be done. You're meeting everyone else's expectations. You're putting everyone else ahead of yourself. And I was in the middle of fertility treatments, unsuccessful fertility treatments, I'll add. And I had a team of 12. I was working at a large financial services firm, and three of my team members went on maternity leave that summer. And the other nine of us were just trying to keep swimming. And it brings you to a little bit of an existential crisis. Like, how could it not? That was a rough combination. Like either one would have been rough, and the combination was just, it took me down. But, one of the ways I coped with it, I took a couple of classes. One was from Brene Brown. One of the last times she offered the Living Brave semester, I got to take that, which was every bit as magical as you would think it is if you're familiar with Brene Brown's work. And then at the same time, I was taking a course called 30 Questions to Bring You Closer to Your Own Wild Heart. And that
Mm.
combination of like the academics studying joy and vulnerability and courage and all these things, and then coming over to this other course and practicing them in very real ways with poetry and writing and expressing yourself artistically. It gave me something else to focus on. It kept me somehow connected to myself because I very easily could have lost myself in that. Um, when it comes to relationship with yourself, identity is part of it. Like, how do you see yourself? And I think the hard thing about fertility treatments is you want so badly to take on that role of mother. And it's a whole other topic. A lot of people lose themselves in that role, of course, but I think, it's a unique time where you want so badly to step into this role and you can't, and it really messes with your sense of identity because you feel almost trapped in your current identity. So all of that just got me asking these questions. You know, it's like I have to assume I'm still here for some purpose. I'm just now discovering what that is. Like, it's been a long journey because I was so steeped in the wake up and grind way of doing things. But over time, asking those questions, I just came to a point where I understood, no, but really, it all starts here. It starts inside. And when I'm not taking care of myself, I'm just going through the motions, and that really caps what I'm able to accomplish. It's like I did a lot of things. I'm not sure how worth doing most of them were. And I think the more I'm in tune with myself, I'm in tune with who I'm created to be and what I'm here to do. The better the things I'm putting out in the world are, the better my relationships are. Like, it really does completely change the way I'm interacting with the world and the way the world gets to experience me. I was not a nice person 8 years ago. I was very used to high pressure. I was doing the best I could. I like myself a lot better now. So that's my journey. That took me from that belief that like it's so selfish to think about yourself, or they called it navel gazing if you were doing work on yourself, to understanding no, that's where it all begins.
Yeah, I find it so interesting as well as it can snowball either way. So like you said, it snowballed 8 years ago where it was just negativity, right? And then
Yeah.
when you start doing the work, it snowballs the other way of hope,
Yeah.
positivity, creativity, love, generosity, just gratitude, appreciation, so much more.
That's such a
And
good point.
it is because, sometimes everybody's human. I can go down that negative road and then it's like you got to catch yourself and get back on track. And I think that's just an important part of our work that we're never one and done. We're never
Yeah.
one and done. It's like we can always turn things around. We could always make things better. So it can snowball either way.
I love
Good.
that. I'm going to start using that. Pick your direction to snowball.
Yes, exactly. And you know what happens when the avalanche starts?
Hmm. Yep.
So So, why do you think that so many of us struggle with being kind and compassionate to ourselves?
The world is so noisy. And I think even though there are more and more voices that are talking about things like body positivity and talking about self-care and things like that, there are also a lot of really dark voices in the world. There are a lot of really hard things happening. Even, when you intend to be kind to yourself, sometimes it's like, I don't need to take care of myself. Some people have it so much worse. So I'm just going to keep trying to do my part. I'm going to keep going. And we mean so well, but it's like that's not how it works. Us denying ourselves joy and care doesn't actually help anyone else. So I think it's just these sort of cultural norms that we've inherited without even realizing it that make it really hard to be kind to ourselves. Like, we're just used to force. We're used to grind. We're used to just making it happen and have to relearn a softer way of doing things.
Mhm. When you talked about outside forces, society, and it's always the negativity that people pick up on. That's the thing they zero in on, which is hard not to do. But if we can do that and ignore that and put that into the background and not listen to it, even though it's so hard.
And some of that is just biology, like our biology is wired to look for danger. So we have to have some compassion for ourselves that we're just wired that way, but we also have to be very conscious and intentional in giving ourselves tools to move that snowball in another direction.
Right, 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 right. I know that I was going to talk about tools later, but I guess we could talk about tools now.
Let's do it.
What are some of your good tools that you use?
I was just talking about one the other day, acknowledging yourself, which I know sounds so strange, but particularly, we were talking about energy vampires. Like, I love setting boundaries. Obviously, over time, you want to change your life so that you're spending less and less time with the people who drain your energy, but sometimes you can't avoid it, especially like if you are in a corporate position or you are in a large family or something like that, there may be times when you are face to face with your energy vampires and there's nothing to do about it. And I think it's so easy to just hand over our power. It's so easy to, we're saying one thing, we're like nodding, we're trying to get through the moment, but inside we're screaming, we're trying to not do something we'll regret later. We have all this noise happening in our head. And the reality is, if we can just kind of come back to ourselves, just pull our energy back to ourselves, we can meet the moment. We can still have that conversation. If you think about it, you're used to doing that anyway, because you're used to having one conversation and having a whole different line of thought going in your head. It's just that line of thought is often angry or maybe even sad. And so instead, using that extra energy to care for yourself, I think, again, everything flows out of energy. So it's really about how we're sort of tending our own fire. And I think that simple act of presence, coming back to center, and in a way, that's what we practice every morning in meditation, right? Is coming back to center. And the more we practice it, the more easily we can do it. I am also a big fan of journaling. I think our heads can be such messy places. And so, getting it out of our heads and actually expressing what we're thinking and what we're feeling and what happened in our reaction to it can just make all of our thinking more clear so that we're able to act more intentionally and take better care of ourselves. Um, and really, in general, I will say with mindfulness, because all the typical mindfulness tools I think are great. I mean, when you have something that feels like self-care that also makes you better at literally everything you're going to do today, how is that not something we're talking more about? So, all the meditation and the spiritual practices, I think, people there are different things that resonate with different people, but I think having some sort of meditative practice is so important, to be able to give your mind that free space.
Yeah, the meditation that Becca and I do in the morning is called TM, Transcendental Meditation, and it's silent, which was so different for me because I always, always, always did guided meditations. And when we first started doing silent, it's silent for 20 minutes and your mind can go all different kind of ways. But I have learned to appreciate it so much being in the stillness. And I think that's a really key for me that I need to be in the stillness more.
I was just going to say it was my first experience with silent meditation too. And I also expected it to be a lot harder than it was to sit in silence. And it's so wonderful once you get used to it. And it doesn't even take that long to get used to it. It's just like this energetic bath. You just feel cleaner afterward.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good practice. When I'm babysitting, I'm not able to do those mornings and it's like, "Ooh, I hate that. I hate missing it." And not
Yeah.
that I can't go back and do it myself, but it's all of us in a group together, the energy, it just feels really good.
Hmm.
So that is a really good a tool for people to use. And it's
Yeah.
free, right? It's
Yeah.
simple and it's free. Is there any other tools we want to talk to, or should we get back into the how we sabotage ourselves?
Let's get back into, yeah, self-sabotage.
I know that we often struggle with forgiving ourselves in the role of self-love. So, are there any ways that you think of that you or how you have forgiven yourself?
Yeah. So personally, it's definitely something I've grappled with. I have I have a lot of regrets about the way I spent the first, 15 or so years of my career and the person I became to function that way. There are a lot of things I wish I could change. Obviously, you can't. And that's the hard thing. I think so often we want to change ourselves. We want to change things about our circumstances. We want to change our lives. And we wish so much that we were starting from a different place. And we spend all this energy just wishing something was already different. And it's like, you can't do that. The only place to begin is right where we are. This is your starting point. And if you need XYZ, like for me, I had to get out of the corporate position I was in. And so that's step one. Like, I wish I had some sort of long-term vision for my career at that point. It would have been easier. But step one was remove myself from what I knew wasn't working and put myself in a place where I could think more deeply about some sort of sense of purpose or work that would be more fulfilling and would allow me to not betray myself so much.
I was going to say that is a big word, betray yourself. We betray ourselves so much. I was in corporate America until 2019 when I was laid off, and I was in a super toxic environment, and it was just like perpetuating itself, day after day, month after month, year after year. And I couldn't see a way out because single mom, I needed to have a paycheck and I was too afraid to make that leap. Yeah, it was a catch 22. I knew I didn't want to be there. I was using my tools to combat the toxicity. When anything would make me super angry, I would take it and I'd turn it around and I'd be like, okay, when you're your next boss, you know what you don't want to do. You know how you don't want to treat people. So I would use it for good, even though I was in that toxic environment. So that self-betrayal, gosh, that hits home for me.
Mhm. And it's such a good point that the tools do help even if you can't change the externals yet. Uh, so yeah, I didn't leave until 2019 as well. So it was almost 4 years where I was aware that something I was doing wasn't working. And I was starting to do all of this soul exploration and learning and growing. But it took me a long time, at least it felt like a long time. And 4 years is a substantial chunk to actually make that big external change. So I think you begin again right where you are. And you just, I used to hear phrases like, you can't bully yourself into changing. You have to love yourself into changing. And I would think, oh, that's really nice. I like that. It just feels better. And I realize now it's also just it's acceptance in the best possible way that this is where I am and this is my circumstance today. And if I want to change it, it begins right here. I'm planting my feet and I am building my movement and my momentum right from here. I can't build that from anywhere other than right where I am. And so the more love and forgiveness for ourselves, for others as much as we can, the stronger we can begin that movement in the direction we want to go.
People listening may say easier said than done,
Yeah.
because self-sabotage it plays a big role in our lives.
So
What
let's talk about that a little bit, though, because I also think we have to take a really good long look at ourselves. I think some of what we label self-sabotage is actually our higher self calling us forward. Or like it's our soul already in motion asking us to come along.
Ooh,
Obviously,
say
we can
more
fool
about that.
ourselves, but right?
Yeah, say more
Well,
about that.
it's such a fine line between, okay, let's say you're in a corporate job and, okay, speaking from experience, let me start that over. Let's say you're in a corporate job and speaking from experience, you're going for promotions because that's what you do. If you're going to be there and you're going to be miserable, you might as well make more money. But you're looking at it and you're feeling really conflicted. And so you're not really going for it. And that affects the results you get. And you have to ask, am I sabotaging myself because I'm afraid of success? Or am I sabotaging myself because my soul knows that it's actually going to make everything worse? I'm not supposed to be here at all. And my next step is out of this building, not into the boss's chair. Over and over, I would get these promotions and I would look around and think, what did I just do? It's even worse than it was before. Like, yes, you're making more money, but you're more miserable. And I had to question whether those two things have to go together. So obviously, there are times where we just sabotage ourselves because we're afraid of success. I think more of us struggle with fear of success than fear of failure. I think, especially in entrepreneurship, you see a lot of people who are really smart and really capable. And, if one thing fails, they will figure it out. They will turn the ship around, they will get it where it needs to go. But success, it's like, oh, now you have all these eyes on you and you have all these people depending on you. And that is scary. Your brain doesn't know what to do with that. And you can't really wrap your mind around it. So the point, I think, in the end is just being radically honest with yourself about what's driving your behavior and what you really want out of this situation. And then whatever you notice is blocking you, that's your next step is to address that block and get it out of your way.
And I think also mediocrity keeps us from moving forward because it's easier. It's
Yeah.
easier than following the success.
Yeah.
Mediocrity and fear.
It can be comfortable in a way. It can also become one of those comfort zones that isn't very comfortable. Because I
Mhm.
think sometimes we stay in these comfort zones for years and years and years, even though it's super uncomfortable and our soul is crumbling on the inside, but we know how to go through the motions. We can do it in our sleep, and so we just keep doing it.
It is true. We just keep doing it on the hamster wheel.
Yep.
So, in a world full of distractions, how can we learn to listen to our inner voice and understand what we truly need?
So much of it comes back to those tools and those practices. So, meditation, writing, paying attention to yourself, and really tuning out the noise, tuning back into the core of you. And it's just a matter of creating that little bit of time and then acting on what you hear. So, the way I picture energy working is like when you're more aligned, everything feels easier. Like it's still work, don't get me wrong. Running our businesses is still work. Doing, if you're in corporate and you move into a job where it feels more fulfilling, it's still work every day when you're showing up, but it's the right kind of work. And so, how you're experiencing it and how you're moving through it doesn't drain your energy the way the toxic environments do or the misaligned positions do. And that gives you that energy to continue to do that reflection and continue to make bold moves that move you in a more aligned direction. It gets you out of that pattern where you're just doing whatever is in front of you because that's all you have the energy to do. You don't have the energy to be asking deeper questions. So it's just giving yourself that first little window through those practices, just carving out that little bit of time for reflection, for meditation, and acting based on what you hear.
Um, Also part of that is even though it's a word that you and I are very familiar with, and I think is becoming more forefront, is that word intuition, is listening to our intuition and not that ego part of our brain, but that wise sage wisdom that it is really our true self. So, do you have tools on how you listen to your intuition, or is it just becoming still? Mine is I have these little things that I call flybys, and it's where my angels or my guardians or they're giving me messages that's tapping into my tuition. So I try to listen to those when I can. How do you use your intuition or tap into that?
So I think in the moment, either in meditation or reflecting, it's almost like a conversation with yourself. Not literally, usually, but I love to use prompts. I love to give myself something to begin with. So, for example, if I am feeling off about something. I like to just kind of get curious about that. Brene Brown calls that rumbling, where you just start to get curious about what you're feeling. And so I'll give myself some prompts around that to help me excavate what it is I'm feeling and just go a few layers down, a little bit of that five whys type situation that we use in corporate of, okay, what's the root here? And I think when you get to the root, you start to get to some of the intuition. So even using what we were talking about before with like, is it self-sabotage or is it my higher self asking me to get out of this situation? You have to get really still, you have to tune in and you have to get really curious. What am I doing and what's driving this? What do I really want here? And it's almost just sitting with those questions, looking at what comes up and then asking more questions about that. And I think it is helpful to have someone to sort of mirror things back to you. Again, our heads can be very messy places, but even if you don't have that, just holding that space for yourself and conversing with whatever is coming up in you can get you really far.
And I think regularly checking in with yourself on that, however you do that, I think is so important too. To regularly check in with yourself and say, "Is this true?" "Does this feel good?"
Yeah, that internal feedback is so important. If it's going to be sustainable, it can't be killing you on the inside. Like that sounds so basic when I say it, but I think again, we just get on the hamster wheel and we keep running and it has an expiration date. And I think the sooner we can recognize what's happening and take intentional steps, the better. And when we bring our energy back and use it in ways that are aligned with who we are and what we want to create, it just puts us back on the right path where we have that space to listen again.
What role do you think setting good boundaries plays in self-care? And why is it challenging? Why is it so dang challenging
Yeah.
to set boundaries?
In terms of role, I actually think boundaries are an expression of self-care. They're one of the ways that we take care of ourselves. I
Absolutely.
think it's difficult because we care, like when we allow our boundaries to be violated, we mean so well. We're trying to be a really good team player or a good family member or a good friend. We're like, count on me, put me in, coach. And, we want to be seen as this all-star player. I've been saying the new midlife crisis is trying to do it all. People in their 30s these days, and this certainly was me, are just going at an absolutely unsustainable pace, just doing everything. And I think boundaries is when you start to recognize that you just can't do everything and you start making some choices about where you're going to spend your very limited and very precious time and energy. I'll give one really specific tool here. It's not about your calendar. I think when you first start looking at boundaries, it's really easy to think in terms of calendar or to-do list or things like that. But I think it's really our energy that we need to be looking at. How much energy is this going to take? And is it going to give me any energy back? And so if someone is asking you to do something where maybe it only takes 2 hours, but you're going to be dreading it all day and it's going to completely destroy your evening because you're going to be recovering from it, that actually is a very different decision than 2 hours spent doing something that you really love and really want to do. Like, let's say you want to get together with your daughter for coffee. Same 2 hour commitment, but very different way it affects your energy throughout the day. And so beginning to make your boundary decisions based on your energy and that flow of energy rather than what the calendar says or what your to-do list says or your list of responsibilities others try to put on you, making it something that flows out of your own priority decisions. And you know what? Others will push back. And it is hard. It's hard to let people down. But I think it's also the sustainable path forward.
Um, I am getting better at setting boundaries the older I get, but I wish I was as wise as you are when I was your age, because it was just, out of guilt. You just would,
Yeah.
okay, sign me up, sign me up, sign me up. So, girlfriend, yeah, you're awesome.
And maybe we're just burning out a little bit earlier. We're burning really bright and hot in our 30s. And
Yeah.
that 40th birthday hits and you're like, I just can't anymore.
But good for you for like sticking to your boundaries.
Yeah,
And I'm better the older I get for sure.
and I
So
keep saying I wish I'd learned it when I was younger. I think Gen Z is getting there. I think they're picking it up way earlier than we did, and I'm happy for them, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about trust, trusting ourselves. Do you have any words that you like to share about trusting ourselves when we make mistakes or experience setbacks? The older I get, I think I do trust myself more. I don't know if it's maturity or I don't give a damn. I don't know what it is, but I trust myself more.
Well, I think partially you do, once you've carried yourself through enough things, you do start to trust yourself to carry yourself through other things. But I think with any relationship, trust is largely a matter of did I do what I said I was going to do? And so it really comes back to when you do take the time to listen to yourself, are you acting based on what you hear to the best of your ability in that moment? And like the world isn't perfect, and so it won't always go the way you hoped. A lot of times you can do everything right, and it still just won't work. And that's so hard to deal with. But if you came through for yourself, if you showed up for yourself, if you gave it your best, it can actually still increase your trust in yourself because you know you did your part. But it is tricky, isn't it?
It is, except for if we could look at our mistakes and our setbacks as just like learning opportunities. So, what did we gain from this? What do we know we don't want the next time? So I think that if we can switch that around, that would also help that innate trust in ourselves.
That's such a good point. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's true because I mean, you don't stop trusting yourself just because you're imperfect. That makes no sense. And we can logic that out, but part of it is just getting it into our being and our way of thinking. Just loving ourselves even when we wished we'd done something differently. Again, that's accepting here's where I am now, and whatever comes next is going to be based on how I am living in this moment. So I'm going to love myself into the future the best I can.
I love that. Love myself into the future. Because when we can trust ourselves, I think it helps our overall mental, emotional, and even physical well being. I know sometimes that is easier said than done as well, but trust. And that's really allowing yourself grace to make mistakes and to make mistakes and have setbacks to allow ourselves.
And when it comes to easier said than done, you know what? We can do hard things. We've all done a lot of hard things in our lives, and we can learn all of this too.
One this was a few years ago, I did a triathlon and this girl can't swim. I can't swim. I had to swim across the lake, a small lake, but I had to swim across the lake. And they're like, "Oh, you can use a noodle," because I was trying to learn beforehand. And they're like, "You can use a noodle." And until I used the noodle, until the water angel took it away from me. But when I think about doing hard things, I would always go, "Girlfriend, you did a marathon or a triathlon. You can do that. You can do that." So I try to use things in my life that are hard and go, "If you did that, you could do this."
Yep, I love that. Yeah, it
Yeah.
becomes the ruler by which you measure everything else. You're like, oh, this small thing over here, yeah, no problem, I got it.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
did that, I got this.
So do you have any daily practices that you use to nurture your health, your body, or is it different? So I mix mine up. I kind of use my practices and I call it my menu, and I determine what I want to do in that day. And I didn't know if there was something you did every day to nurture yourself and your love.
Mindful movement is actually my favorite health practice. I'm already feeling my age a little bit. I'm 41 now, and I feel it in my knees, and I feel it in my back and in my shoulders. And so, focusing more on mobility and flexibility than strength and cardio has been really helpful. And I use these meditations on the Calm app. Actually, the woman who does the mindful movement on there, I just really love her. I love her approach. She uses a whole bunch of different modalities from yoga to qigong, and I can't even remember some of the others, but I love that mix, and I love coming back to my body and my breath and clearing my mind at the same time. It just kind of shakes off all of the chaos happening around me so that I can enter the rest of my day more wholeheartedly and honestly just more whole, more wholly me because I'm present again.
What did you say that was there was an app that you use? What was the
Yeah,
name of it?
the Calm app.
Oh, the Calm.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry,
the
with my
Calm.
cold, I think.
Okay,
But yeah, CALM, the
okay.
Calm app. Yeah.
There's also one that I use, the Insight Timer. Have you ever used
Oh,
that
I've
one?
heard of it. I haven't used it, but
Yes,
I've
that one
heard of it.
too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is a good practice. Anything else that you want to add with your practices? Well, we do the meditation, which is really good, and movement.
Yeah, so meditation, movement, and I do write every single day. I actually just finished The Artist Way.
Oh,
Uh, sh
cool.
yeah, she's the one who recommends writing 3 pages first thing every morning, and I did adopt that practice, and it has been super helpful because about a page and a half in, you've kind of gotten all of the chaos out in paper, and then you can really start to ask yourself some deeper questions. I could not believe, especially at first, things would come up where I'm like, I didn't even know that's how I felt. Things from years ago. And so now I'm sort of in the present instead of uncovering things from years ago. And that is a practice that I am intending to carry with me. Those 3 pages, first thing every morning, and just seeing what's going on in here, giving myself that space before I even get into the day.
I also I adopted that practice, and I am not, I'm not dedicated to it daily, but you go back and read yours. I never read mine.
I do.
I love
I
that.
do. Yeah. Because a lot of times I have all these ideas and I don't want to forget about them. So it gives me that ability to go back and draw inspiration from my own life.
So, for somebody out there that may feel disconnected from themselves, where do you think that they can begin to rebuilding the relationship with themselves?
It's actually very similar to how you would rebuild any relationship. You can almost sit down with a journal and just at the top write what's been going on. And then just start to free write and see what comes up and just give yourself that space. And it can be so surprising, even shocking to see what comes up. But again, if you're listening to yourself and you're acting based on what you hear, and it may not be some big grand action the first time, right? Like you're probably not going to get up from one session writing and quit your job. But if you're opening up your mind to a sense of possibility, or you're starting to have different conversations, or you're dusting off the old resume or some of these little steps that can start to move you in that direction and give you more of a sense of possibility, that can start to build that trust with yourself and start moving that snowball in the direction you want it to go.
Yeah, and that snowball we were talking about, that whole idea of law of attraction is that snowball, right? The more positive we think, the more positive things that are going to happen.
Yeah, your thoughts really are driving all of your behavior and all of your results, and that's driving everything that comes back to you.
What about someone that might be listening that is struggling to love and accept themselves?
I think first I just want to offer compassion. It can be really dark when you're in a place where, for whatever reason, you're just not sure you're worthy of that. Like when we come to a place where we're really struggling with these concepts, it's usually not a good story that put us there. And so I think if I can just kind of offer some compassion to get you started, I will also give the warning that sometimes when you give yourself compassion after a long dry spell, there can be tears, a lot of them, and so maybe just giving yourself space even before you start to ask the questions and just play with it a little, just in the dark at night when it's just you and you feel as safe as you can, maybe just open up a little bit of room in your mind for compassion to enter and see what that feels like and see what happens. And then get as curious as you can. I think even showing yourself compassion by not going faster than you can is a huge first step when you're in that dark place. But just whatever threads you feel like you can tug at, honoring that and getting curious and just opening up that possibility for yourself is a huge first step, and give yourself credit for the work you did.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I know a lot of times people feel that they're isolated and they're the only ones that are feeling like that. But so many of us feel that. Maybe we just show it a different way.
Yeah.
So I do love that. We're all worthy. We are all enough, even though some days it may not feel like it, but we are. And
Yeah.
we deserve love. We
Yeah.
deserve self-love. Yeah, we're all worthy.
I will second that.
Yes. Um, I appreciate you coming on so much and talking about how we can love ourselves a little bit more. Is there something that you'd like to share with our audience before we go that we haven't said, or have we pretty much we pretty much said it all today?
I'll just first echo what you said. You deserve to pay attention to yourself and take care of your own needs. It's okay to use some of your energy for yourself. And trust that that is going to very positively impact everything else that you're so concerned about and all the people that you love so much. Even the fact that you are worried about it, honor that in yourself, that you care so much. And it's okay to use some of that caring for yourself.
Mm, wise words, my friends. I appreciate you so much coming on, and I will have all the information in the show notes on how you can get in touch with Becca. You have been awesome today for me, and I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. I really
Okay.
appreciate you.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon. Bye.
Bye.